cut that off where possible. Right, it's the next day now. I've come back in the workshop. I've been busy in the garden this morning. An hour and a half, 2 hours in the garden, messing around, tidying up. I've had something to eat. I thought I'd come in this afternoon to the workshop and just do a little bit more progress on this tender, which is on the bench here. You can just about see it in the corner of the screen. Alright, I've got the material now to make the little stretchers for the brake hangers. You saw me doing that in the previous bit of the video. The last piece I've got, which is this one here, is a bit too long. I want to cut it off. I don't want to mill that end off. I mean, how long is this now? This is about 2 7/16, well, we want about 1 inch and I'm going to cut it off 1 5/8 inches. That leaves me a little bit to clean up to 1 9/16. So we've got probably about 3/4 inch we need to cut off. Now we could put this in the milling machine, we could put it in the shaper or whatever, and we could just, you know, we could mill that down or we could shape it down. But that seems a lot of work on the machine, just, you know, to cut a piece off that. It's only, what is it, 1 3/32 wide. It's actually 10 millimeters that way. It's metric hot roll bar. So what I thought I would do is, it won't go in the power saw. There's not enough to grip in the power saw. You won't get that in and it'll just come straight out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a Mark 1 power hacksaw. And I'll show you what it is in 2 seconds. I'm going to grab hold of it. Look at this. A Mark 1 power hacksaw. A real engineer's hacksaw. You can always tell an old style engineer's hacksaw. It's got a file handle on it here. This is an Eclipse one, very good make. I've got 3 of these. And this is my preferred hacksaw. I like this type. These are the type that we had when I was an apprentice in the apprentice training school. And the type I've used ever since. I've got some of these new pistol grip ones. I've got one of them. I think it's from one of the toolboxes down there. They fit in the toolbox easier. These are a bit longer, you see, a bit more cumbersome. And for the amount of times I used that toolbox under the bench there, you know, it wasn't worth me putting in one of these. So I've got one of these down the railway in the toolbox there. I've got this one, and I've got another one hidden somewhere. Can't think where it is. But anyway, the engineer's hacksaw, and it's a 12-inch one, I believe. Let me just check. Because the power hacksaw behind it takes a 10-inch blade. Oh yeah, it's a 12-inch. You can see. It's a 12-inch hacksaw there. These are adjustable for different size blades, but nowadays you'll probably just find there's only 2 available that I know of. That's a 12-inch and a 10-inch. And the 10-inch one is only available in, is it 24 teeth, I think. That was the blade which I had, the original blade for the power hacksaw, which is just behind you. But anyway, if you've got a 12-inch blade, there's many options for you with a number of teeth per inch. And that's how you classify your hacksaw blade. It's 12 inches long, it's hand hacksaw, and it's a number of teeth per inch. You can get bimetal, you can get solid high-speed steel. These are bimetal ones, I believe. It's an Eclipse blade, this is. I like Eclipse blades. I've had good results with them. But you can see this one's done a considerable amount of work. Just look how shiny that blade is. A lot of people I see, when they come to do a hacksaw, it's like, oh God, we've got to do some hacksawing. Oh, it's hard work. Yeah, it's hard work, especially if you've got no technique and no skill and you've got no stamina, no level of fitness. But if you have got them skills and stamina and things like that, it's not an issue for you, it's not a problem. You'll know how to go about cutting things off. I used to say to some of the apprentices, I used to say to them, you don't rush and go mad when you're cutting through, for example, a bolt. you might have a whole pile of them to do, and all you've got is your hacksaw, because you might not be allowed to use an angle grinder on site because of explosion or whatever, so you've got to use this. So anyway, right, the hacksaw. A couple of things which are really important with it. But there's three important things with this type of hacksaw. The first thing is we can orient the blade in 4 different orientations. As it is now, the teeth are at the top here. We can turn it through 90, we can turn it through 180, so the teeth are at the bottom, and we can turn it through 90 again, which is 270. So we can cut. So if you wanted to cut down the side of a long piece of material, you can. Might be you've got to get in and cut something down like that. It gives you quite a few options. The other thing to consider with hacksaws, the teeth always point forward, never ever backwards. Always forward. There's usually an arrow on more modern blades. There's an arrow to show you which is the correct direction it should go, that way. The other thing to consider is the correct tension on your hacksaw. It actually tells you on these, so you don't have to remember it, but it's useful to know, because not all hacksaw frames will have this on. Take up the slack and then 3 full turns. I like a tight hacksaw blade. I sometimes go beyond that. I just like that blade to be a little bit tighter, and it suits me the way I use the machine, or use the hacksaw. Of course, the other thing to consider as well is the material and the thickness of the material that you're cutting through. So it's recommended that you have a minimum of 3 teeth in contact with the work. So for example, if you were cutting something which was, say, a 1/16 of an inch thick, to be honest with you, I wouldn't be using this kind of hacksaw. I'd be using a junior hacksaw, just to try and get more teeth in contact with the material. If you're trying to cut through a 1/16 of an inch steel sheet with, for example, an 18 TPI blade, you're going to have problems. You're going to have problems. You'd want to go to a 32, and like I say, I'd probably go for the junior hacksaw, which is hanging up on the wall behind you. But anyway, there's some background information for you. I know a lot of you know all about this kind of thing, but there might be some people out there who, some of the viewers who don't understand this. Some may not have even seen a hacksaw, probably never used one. Yeah? Especially in this day and age, if it can't be done by a computer, it can't be done. Well, I don't fit into that philosophy. I was taught to get the job done and get it sorted, and that's what we do. But anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to use this hacksaw, and we're going to cut down that end off there. The little line striped on there, you probably can't see, it's too far away. But we're going to cut the end off, and that saves having to mill all that material off, just wearing a cutter away, just wasting time. It doesn't take long to cut through things with the right technique. I'm going to show you what we do. These techniques are what I learned when I was an apprentice in my first year apprenticeship when I was 16. And I've used them ever since because they work, and they work well. So I'm going to reposition you so you can see a bit better. Now, one of the things about, in fact, let me reposition you first, and then I'll just describe what we're going to do and why we're going to do it. All right, there you are. You're looking down at the vise now. I'll tell you a couple of things about the vise as well. It's important to consider this. In fact, I wasn't going to go into the vise today. I was just going to look at doing the hacksawing. But you can't do the hacksawing. You won't be efficient cutting through material if you haven't got your vise set correct. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring you out a little bit so you can see much clearer what I'm going to do now. I'm just going to close that down. I'm going to show you something. Alright, we're standing by the bench now, by the vise, and I'm trying to make sure that there's enough. You've got to see the top half of my body and the vise as well. It's important that you can see these, because I'll show you something really important. One of the first tasks that we did, or first jobs we did when I became an apprentice, we were in the bench fitting department, because I did bench fitting for about a year. The first thing we did was to set the vise to the correct height. Now, what happened was we used to have fitting bays, and there'd be a series of vices on different benches, and then you'd have your cupboard and things, and you were allocated a vice in an area of the bench, and a cupboard and drawer and things like that, and you kept all your stuff in there. But one of the first things we used to do was to set the vise to the correct height. And the way you do that is quite simple, and this is a starting point for you. It's a starting point. You might want to make an adjustment up or down, because you find, no, that method you showed me, Dave, doesn't suit me. I've got a little bit longer arms or shorter arms. Well, I haven't got long arms, I haven't got a long reach. Someone who has will affect the setting of the vise. What you're supposed to do, put your fist, stand up straight, put your fist underneath your chin, as if you're giving yourself a good thump. Yeah? And you're there, look, see? That sets the height of your vise. I like the vise at this height here. Like I say, that's your starting point. You might find, I don't like that position, it's uncomfortable, I can't do that. You might think, I want to put some packing pieces. And what we had were various packing pieces that went underneath each vise, and you set them to suit. And what I did when I built this workshop here with the bench, all the benches are set the same height, and they set the height that suits the vise, that suits my height, my body. Somebody who came in here who was, for example, about 6'4" or whatever, you'd have to duck getting underneath the door. But they would find it uncomfortable using some of the equipment in here, because I've got it set for me, I'm 5'10". So you've got to think about that. When you go, you might go on site somewhere, and you go into the little workshop there, and think, oh, man, this vise is way up here. Yeah, you might have a guy there who's 6'6" or whatever. So you need to think about things like that. You might have somebody who's only small, but you've got to adapt to these sort of things. So anyway, there you go. That's the first thing. Make sure your vise is the correct height, because you see a lot of people using a vise. The vise is not at the right height, and you can tell. You can tell they're struggling. They're uncomfortable. They're not liking any of it. Get it set right first. Right. I'm going to bring you round, or bring you down to have a look at what we're doing here, because I'm going to put the work in the vise. And I'm right-handed. This was another thing I was taught when I was an apprentice. I'm right-handed, so I cut on the left-hand side of the vise. Now, one of the old boys who used to work for me, Jimmy Martin, exceptional engineer. Jim was first class, really was first class. He's well into his 80s now, Jim was. But anyway, he's right-handed, but he used to saw on the right-hand side of the vise. Well, that's not how I was taught. I don't like to wrap myself around the vise. I like to work on the left-hand side here. Someone who's left-handed, they would work on this side here like that. Okay. Right, let's have a look what's what. I'll move you over towards the drill, just behind you there, and then you can get a better view of what we're doing. Alright, I've got the work here. I'm going to put it in the vise. See, I've got my little soft jaws. I make my own soft jaws out of bits of brass sheets. Just bend them over. These have got hardened serrated jaws in this vise. A lot of people change these over, make their own jaws out of aluminium, copper, or whatever. You can get some soft jaws that fit in here. I don't like them. They're a bit crap. But anyway, we'll use these. I'm going to put the work in the vise. And we're going to just sight it to make sure that it's level. As level as we can be. It's not quite level there. So it's a good starting point to get your work level. Spend the time to sort it out properly. Hey, that's good enough for what it is. Make sure it's tight. Alright. 3 full turns we said with this. After you've taken all the slack up. slack's taken up. It's half, 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3. And like I said, I like to go a little bit further. I've got 3.5 on mine. You need to set your hacksaw to suit you. You must determine, not me. You determine how it's set. Just like your vice, you determine how that's set. Now, the teeth are the correct weight. And this blade here has done a lot of work. A lot of people I've seen, as soon as they come to do a job, because they don't want to do it with a hacksaw, oh, I'm going to put a new blade in. Well, they only had a new blade a day or two before. They have another new blade. There's one job and they chuck it away and put a new in it. You don't need to, that's still sharp. That's still capable of doing the job. You know, throw it away for the sake of it. Right, the important thing about hacksawing is just getting the right stance. It's really important to do that. You've got to be rigid. You don't want to be able to knock over or fall over or something like that. So you're going to get yourself in the right position. Now you can't see very well there. So what I'll do is I'll just move the camera back and I'll just demonstrate the typical sort of position your legs are going to be in relation to your body, and then I'll show you what we do with the top half of the body. Alright, I've got you set quite a way back there, just so you can see the stance of the body when you're hacksawing. I'm going to turn at 90 degrees now, and I'm going to imagine that there's a vice right here. So when I'm hacksawing, I'm this way. Yeah, my left leg is leading because I'm right-handed and put on that left-hand side of the vice. So I'm going to be like that. I'm going to make sure I can't fall over. But people who do karate and things like that will understand that. The stance is important. So you've got to get in the right stance first. And this left hand is on the end of the frame. I'll just show you. It'll be on the end of the frame like that. No, don't grab it like that. Use your fingers. Okay. Keep your hands away from the blade. So you're going to be like that. And you use the full length of the blade. Yeah. Right, so that's the stance. Let's have a look at what happens when you start cutting in your upper body, where that's going to be. Alright, I've got you by the drilling machine now, so you can see the upper part of my body now. You can imagine my legs in the stance that we just looked at there. What I do is, I'm looking at the line here now, and I use my thumb just up against the side of the hacksaw blade, not up against the teeth, because the teeth will cut you. About many times I don't need to do that. Just put that straight across and I'm okay with it. So you get a little nick there, and what that does is it gives you a starting point. Okay. There you go. And then what you'll do is you'll start cutting, and you're going to use the full length of the blade. You don't have to smash into the end pieces here, don't do that. But use the full length of the blade. Keep it level. The important thing is to keep the blade level. You don't want to be doing this kind of thing. You don't do that, that's madness. That's the most uncomfortable way of using a hacksaw. Okay, just getting myself started there. Alright, get in the right sort of stance. Let's get going. Having some difficulty just lately as well. I've got problems with my right arm here. It's quite painful at times. But you can see we're making good progress, nearly full depth of the blade there. And we aren't going mad. And like I say, you might have to do, you know, several pieces of material over the course of the shift or whatever, or the day. And you don't want to be knackered on the first one. Another 8-9 hours to go. You've got to be sensible with things. Plus as well, if you're going a bit slower, you do find they'll cut better, you'll cut straighter, more efficient. What I find is that when the blades it is getting a bit worn now, you start to lose the set on the teeth. And the set is the offset of the teeth one side or the other to give you the clearance for the blade going down through the work. It tends to lose the set before you wear the teeth out. See, we're nearly all the way through. It hasn't taken that long. There you go. There we are. Job done. And what we used to do as well is when you finish with your hacksaw, we used to take the tension off the blade. Because we used to keep them in drawers and things like that, and what would happen is you put your hacksaw in a drawer, left the tension on, you start putting the tools and equipment in, they land on top of the blade and smash the blade. So it's force of habit for me now. I take the tension off when I hang it up. But what you do is, with your hacksaw, is up to you, it's your choice. Alright. See? That's the piece that come off. That saved us a lot of messing around. Imagine how long it would have taken on the milling machine to do that, take it off. It would have been stuck out over the side. Kept milling, adjusting, milling more off. Just wearing your cutter out really, just for the sake of a bit of hacksawing. That's scrap now, I don't need that piece. Now that should be about 1 5/8". And it is. I'm happy with that. Alright, I've just been putting together the video for hacksawing. And there was a couple of things which I'd forgotten to mention. The first thing is obviously the teeth cut on the forward stroke, we did mention that. But on the forward stroke you apply the pressure, and you apply only enough pressure to cut efficiently and effectively. What you don't try and do is bend the blade or break the blade. It's only just enough. Yeah? And the blade stays in contact with the work all the time. You don't lift it off. Yeah? You don't lift it off. So you apply the pressure on the forward stroke and then just let it drag back on its own. Yeah? The reason for that is when you drag it back through the slot, any chips which are stuck in the teeth will be dislodged and they fall off. That's why if you're cutting properly, when you see your works in the vise here, you'll see the swarf here, you'll also see it on the floor there because it's coming back. When you draw the hacksaw back, the bits fall off. So that was one thing. And the second thing was the number of teeth per inch. Okay, we did say that we wanted 3 teeth minimum in contact with the work. Well, the other thing is that we need to consider is the hardness of the material. If you were cutting something like tool steel, something like that, you would need more teeth. If you were cutting something like aluminium, you'd need less teeth. So if we were cutting aluminium, maybe we want to look at an 18 teeth per inch blade. If you're cutting tool steel, maybe you want to look at a 32. But then you've got to consider how many teeth you're going to have in contact, what's the thickness of the material. And you've got to make the decision what you want to do. But there you are. I hope that was of use to you. It was quite interesting to make that little video. I've got a whole load of different things we could go into if people were interested in various aspects of engineering. But that was one. I thought it was important because I see so many people out there hacksawing, and I think, no, that's not the way you should be doing it. So I thought it would be good to just try and pass on some information to people. How you use it's up to you. You'll be using the hacksaw, not me. I've got mine here. What I do is up to me, and what you do is up to you. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed that little video. If you want to see some more like this, just let me know and we'll see if we can put something together for you. Alright, thanks for watching.